So hey there fellow YouTubers, Frank Bush here again. So in the last video I did, I showed how to make these Frank Bush modular ropecraft systems. And in this video I'm going to show in-field examples. I know there was a little delayed, I had some plumbing issues I had to deal with. I was hoping to have this video out a week or two, but c'est la vie, right? So I'll just get on with it now and start doing the examples, yeah? Okay, so the very first thing I'll show you, I'm just going to take one of the smallest components, an individual unit of one of the modular ropecraft systems, yeah? And I'll show you how I'm going to lash up a backpack to this tree. So there's a few different options I can do here. I can turn around and simply come around the tree and I take the loop on the one end and just feed the rest of itself through, and I'm cinched onto that tree now. This isn't going anywhere, and I can adjust the height easily enough just by shifting it to wherever I want it in that regard. And when it comes to hooking my backpack on now, backpacks all pretty well have the two handles that sit on the side, right? So it's easy enough to turn around and feed the component of the modular ropecraft system through and then just bring it back on itself. And then I open up one of the loops that sits between the knots and just poke the knot through as such. And the tension closes that and locks on that knot, so that knot has nowhere to go to. I can pull and apply tension here, and it's not going to give or anything. I've now cinched this backpack up to the tree, yeah? So I'll just make sure the camera's catching that on a half decent angle. Yeah, and I'll even come in close on exactly what I just did there, yeah? So I'll try to get up close with this the best I can. So this is one of my, like I say, the modular ropecraft units where I've just got the 4 knots that are sitting down the line, and then it's got the loop on the end, yeah? And all I've done is just feed that loop through both arms of the backpack, and then I bring it up on itself, and I take the knot that's closest to the loop, I just bring it up and I feed it through as such, and then just allow it to have tension. And I'm locked on there. This backpack isn't going anywhere. And I'm strung up, to the tree. Just kind of pull back a bit. You can see I'm up off the dirt really easily. So I'll show a quick alternative to this and we'll move on because there's lots of examples to show. But I just wanted to get the basic understanding of kind of how to lash and connect these units to objects and stuff, yeah? So now when I first connected to this tree, I just brought the loop around and then fed the end of itself through itself, yeah? But if I want to make this quick release, I can simply just come around the tree as such, and then I take that knot and I bring it back on itself and then just feed it through the same as I have been doing, and then I just allow that to apply tension. And you can see it wants to give when it's loose, but as soon as there's tension set into here, it'll hold and lock, and that knot then gets pinched with the tension against the tree itself, yeah? But when I want to quick release this, I can just simply grab this tag and pull, and it all frees off. And it's just that simple. So I'll turn around and strap the bag up as a quick release, and then I'll move on to other examples, yeah? So now I'll do this whole setup where it's all quick release now to the tree. So I just pop that on, I make sure I've got tension on that line, I grab my backpack, and now a lot of backpacks have like handles and you can easily go through the handle. I've got a little tiny loop here that sits on my bag, and I can just as easily feed it through that loop. And this loop is tiny, so it's a little bit tight, but it's easy enough to turn around and bring it on and then just push the knot through the loop as I've been doing. And you can see I'm attached and this is free floating now. But both these connects are quick connects. So if I want to just pull this and go, I can just take it from the tree, right? And likewise the other way. So I'll just set this back on again. And you can see there's no knots being tied here. One way or the other, I'm strapped to that tree, but it's the same on this end, right? I could quick release here and just pop this off. And because the loop is so tiny, I could just pop that off the tree and leave that sitting there, right? So there's options. If I wanted to do the first method where it was just feeding the loop through itself, where I take the loop, bring it around the tree and just feed it through itself. This is more of a kind of a hard lashed connection point. Even if there's no tension, this is locked onto this tree and it's not going anywhere. But if you want everything quick release, you just do it the way I showed you. So it's a little bit versatile in that way, right? And that was just with a single one of these modular Ropecraft units. So now I built these as little sets in the previous video, and I'll show you now. It'll be the same mindset if I want to go around larger diameter trees. Like this is only a tiny tree, right? So I'll move over to a tree that has a larger diameter and just show how I could easily scale it up and just use this component to do the exact same thing, yeah? So you can see now I'm switching up to a larger diameter tree, yeah? And now I've got one of the full sets, exactly the ones I built out in the last video. So if you don't know exactly how these are made, go back, watch the last video, and you'll be able to see detailed example. But now I can do the exact same thing here, where now I'm coming around a larger diameter tree, and the little individual green unit just wasn't enough, right? But having the full units allows me now where I'm quick lashed on, just like I showed here, but now I've got this entire unit strapped to the tree. And what I can do is I've got these drop lines that exist on here that I talked about in the previous video, and I can turn around and just strap on my bag to these drop lines as well, and I can do all of this quick release style. So I'll just feed that through. I'm going to bring my knot up and just poke it back through the little holes that exist between the knots, and as such I'm locked onto the tree now. That backpack is secured to this tree. So you can see, using these units, I can scale up and scale down how much cordage I'm consuming. In this specific example, I didn't even use the other green part. I can reclaim this easily enough where if I want to use this component, you know, I can just pull it off the unit and have it now to go off and do other tasks with. So it's really flexible in that regards of, if I didn't want to use the green one, I could have simply just used the orange one to achieve the exact same results that I've just done here. So it's a really, really flexible construct in that perspective, if you will, yeah? So I'll just strap this back on so I keep my units together as I go through my examples as much as possible. But you can see though, there is no knots being tied in the field of one way or the other, and this is all quick release. I can pop this, take it and go, and this bag is freed off, right? So, and it's the same with this. I can pop this and just come off the tree. So it's really, really flexible in that regard. But hopefully that gives you an example there. I'll strap this back up and show you going through that little tiny loop on the backpack just to make sure it's clear before we move on to other examples within the video, yeah? So I'll try to give this up close just as best I can, but on my backpack I've got just a little tiny loop that sits on there. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. Now with this tarred bank line, the drop lines I have, I can simply just feed those through as such, and then just bring that knot back up. I open up the little loops that exist between the knots in the modular Ropecraft system, poke the knot through and apply tension. And it's just that simple. It's locked on, it's not going anywhere. And if I want it to be quick released, I just pull that, it all comes loose, and I'm back off the tree again. So it's that elementary. And all this quick release mindset is going to be a universal theme that gets used throughout the video. So when everything you do pretty well, you can have it be quick release and really flexible. So needless to say, I'll switch on to some other examples now just to kind of get the video going, yep. So one of the other really common things you end up doing when you're out in the field is building tripods. So I'm just going to go back down to having one of these individual, the green smaller units. I'm just going to break this off the set now and use this for the example. I'm going to show you how to kind of whip together tripods really rapidly without having to tie any knots and that kind of stuff. And if you've watched lots of my previous videos, this kind of stuff will be old hat to you. But I've got 3 sticks here, and I'll come in close and show you exactly what I'm going to do with this individual modular Ropecraft unit, and show you how I can use this single unit to turn around and form a fully functioning tripod, yeah? So like I say, I've just got one of these individual units where it's got the loop, the 4 knots, the line, the 4 knots again, and the loop, right? So what I'm going to do is turn around and just take one of the loops, and I'm going to kind of roll it in on itself as such. And it's going to create this kind of little pocket here that it can slide on, yeah? As such. Now I'm going to take the other end of the unit with its loop. I'm going to feed that right through that opening now, just past the first knot. And when I do that, I'm going to apply tension now, and this allows it to cinch up in behind that knot. Hopefully the camera's getting that well. And I now have a locked loop, It's not going anywhere. So I can use this loop to my advantage now when it comes to making a tripod. So I'll shift my camera angles back and we'll just fast lash together a tripod and get that up and running, yeah? So now I've got these 3 sticks here, just that I grabbed off the forest floor, that kind of thing. You know, and they're not even the straightest sticks. They're not really ideal examples, but they'll do the job. So I'm going to take that loop I just made and I'm going to twist it and double it up on itself so it becomes like a double loop. So it just becomes smaller. I'm going to leave the little loop that was on the end of the Modular Ropecraft system as a tag that hangs off. So all I'm going to do now is take the 3 ends of the sticks that we have and just line those out so that they're side by each with each other. And I'm going to take that doubled up loop and just hook it over top of all 3 of the ends of those sticks. And I'm going to go down about 6-8 inches or so down the sticks, just so they're on half decent. And then I'm just going to take the middle stick and I'm going to start to twist it to bind up that loop that we created there, the double loop. And I'm just going to twist that once, twice, maybe 3 times, just enough where the tension starts to bind up between these 3 sticks. And in doing so, it now allows it, I'm pretty well there now, it now allows it where I can set out a tripod above a fire and stuff. And I know, like I say, I know these sticks aren't really the best example. I'm just working with poor wood, but such is life, right? Either way, it gives you the idea here how quick and easy it is to lash together a tripod to now have a fire underneath it where you can hang a pot over and that kind of thing. And you could see there was no knots being used yet. So I'll take the other element of this component and now do a hang off this tripod where I brought a pot along with me, and I'll show you hanging the pot so you'd be able to hang it over fire and that kind of thing, yeah? So 2 seconds and I'll shift camera. I'll just show you a quick up close of this tripod. You can see it's not fancy here. The lashing really just twisting the center of the, you know, you got the 3 sticks, twisting the center one and just causing it to kind of bind up on that doubled up loop. There's enough tension to allow you to create a tripod that you can hang a pot over. So it's not going to look elegant. It's going to be really, you know, kind of simple, and that's the whole point of it, right? I don't want to get in all lashing and frapping and all that kind of stuff. I just want to be able to quickly whip together a tripod, have it up and running in 30 seconds, and get it over a fire and start cooking my meal, right? So one way or the other, I'll just shift the camera back now, and we'll kind of expand on with this a little. So now I'm just going to take one of the orange components that I had for the Modular Ropecraft system, which are just the same thing, but just a little longer, and they've got some drop lines on them. And I'm just going to take the loop end of that and just hook it on one of the legs of the tripod. And then it's really easy. I can just wrap this around and get it to whatever height I want. As simple as that. And now I've got an end where I can hook my pot on. So I'll just grab my pot here. It's hanging on the camera, so sorry if I bumped the camera a little. And I'll just pull my pot out and show it as the example now, where my pot has bail handles on it. And it has, you know, a handle, and I recommend for if you're out in the field using pots with bail handles and all that kind of stuff exactly for things like this, where it just makes, you know, your cooking when you're out in the field that much easier. But I've got a simple pot now with a lid and that kind of stuff, and all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take one end of the Modular Ropecraft system with the loop on it. I'm going to pass that through and just bring it up enough where I can take that knot, and exactly as I've done with the backpack and stuff earlier, I'm just going to push it through its own little loop in between the knots and allow it to have tension. And you can see now I'm able to hang my pot over a fire successfully with ease, right? Let's see, I just want to make sure I'm still in camera here. Yeah, we're still okay. And I know the sticks I used weren't really ideal, just a little shorter than I would normally go with, but it's what I found within 2 minutes of being out here, right? So now I can adjust the height of this over the fire just by turning around and loosening off the straps at the top, or I can pull in my legs and have it that the whole tripod is a little thinner and stands higher. It's really flexible in that regard, and if you want to move your pot, you know, left and right over the fire and that kind of stuff, it becomes as simple as moving the legs. And you can see I was able to set up this tripod cook setup without tying any knots. And when it comes to getting my pot off now, because it's all quick release, I can just pop that off, and I now have the pot in my hand, and all of this is free, right? I just make sure I keep this up out of the fire so it doesn't melt and burn, but it's just as simple as that. And when I want to turn around and, you know, retrieve my gear at the end of it, it's as simple as just unwinding now this back off this tripod, you know, a couple turns, and I can come back off this tripod now, and I've reclaimed my kit because there was no knots there. And when it comes to the tripod itself, if I turn around and simply just turn one of the legs back a bit to loosen off some of the tension, I can slide out one of the legs, which then frees up everything and allows me to slide out the rest of the legs with ease. And you can see now I'm back down to just having that loop I had with my Modular Ropecraft system, and I'll come in close here for this. And when it comes to freeing this off now, like I say, it's a little dirty, but whatever, such is life. Now when it comes to reopening up this unit, I simply just grab onto the back here and pull, and it opens up, and I'm back to just having my vanilla Modular Ropecraft systems. So just as simple as that, I was able to whip together a tripod, hang a pod over the fire, cook with it, reclaim my kit and go, and I didn't tie a single knot. So I'll move on to some of the next examples, yeah? So now there may be situations where you just want to hang something and get it up off the ground, but you don't necessarily want to strap to a tree. So I'll just pull out one of the sets now, and I'm going to do the exact same thing I've shown earlier in the video, where I just rapidly lash onto this tree, and that way everything's kind of there for the example. Now when it comes to connecting to here, I've got lots of room now. I could go. I could even turn around if I felt like there was too much room. I could bring this around the tree twice and just double it up. You know, it's really flexible in that regard. If I wanted to shorten the length, you know, a foot or two, that kind of thing. You can see I'm strapped on and it's still all quick release, but it kind of shifted things a little bit that way, right? And what I can do is these little drop lines that I have on there, I can just shift those over, and I can do the exact same thing on this side, where I can come around the tree, you know, and if I want to bring it around once or twice or 3 times or whatever, however many you want really, and then I just come across, and then I bring it back, and then I just, exactly as I've been doing, I find a spot where I can just stick the knots through and just quick release, strap it onto that tree. This is up there now, it's not going anywhere. And you can see I didn't have to tie any knots, right? And now I've got these units here, and each individual one of these, I can do the exact same thing. I can turn around and just quick release, bind things up to this line now, and say, yeah, I just want to get some of my gear up off the ground. So that's quick release strapped on. I'll go grab a bag, I'll cut cameras, I'll go grab a bag and just bring out another example or two just to kind of make this a little more robust, yeah? So now I've just got a water bottle, and I've shown examples of how I kind of strap things to water bottles so I can use them in these types of setups. But now because we had these 2 lines here that dropped off, these drop lines, I could easily use the other one that's unused right now and just bring it up, set a quick release, and hook that in, and that water bottle is strapped on there. I don't have to worry. And I can do that with multiple pieces of kit now, and because they're on Pro-6, I can shift the position that they sit on the line. You know I've had a few people make comments about jungle knots and how this is very similar to those, but in reality this system is far more advanced than a simple jungle knot would be, because you're able to do things like this. Not only do I have the flexibility of being able to slide these drop lines with their quick connects down the lengths of the line to wherever I want them to be, I use way less cordage. To give you an idea, in order to make a 30-foot long jungle knot rope, it takes 100 foot of cordage. When it comes to this setup, you know, if I turn around and used 100 foot of cordage, I get closer to 50 to 60 feet of distance that I can go. It's a substantial gain when it comes to how much cordage you're saving, and hence weight and functionality and everything. The Modular Ropecraft systems really, they're fully intercompatible with jungle knots and those types of things. I can use these systems with them, but in my mind, these are just better units, and they're far more flexible because I can do things like this, where a jungle knot, you can't have Prosex incorporated into a jungle knot system. It just doesn't work. But with the modular Ropecraft systems, depending on the length in which you make these larger modular components, can drastically impact how much running room you can have with these Prosex, and have it that, you know, when I apply tension, that locks, it's not going anywhere, right? And as soon as the tension's been released, I can go back to sliding that on the line. You can't do that kind of stuff with a jungle knot, just full stop. You just can't, you know. So I'll stop ranting about that, but this hopefully gives you an idea now of if I wanted to quickly use just a single component and start to get up off the ground. And I've got two other units here, and I'll come in close and I'll show how, if I wanted to kind of more permanently connect this, how I can use these units to do a more permanent connection as the next step. Yeah, but as you can see, just with a simple single set, I could turn around and hang up to 4 units, not to mention the loops that we have between the knots here. They could easily be used like clothespins to pinch on things and that kind of stuff. And I've shown that in previous videos and the examples in those, but so I won't go too far in that regard. But hopefully that gives you an idea of kind of how flexible even a single unit of, you know, single unit set of these can be. So like I say, I'll come in close and I'll show the kind of more locked permanent set you can do with this kind of stuff. Yeah. So now I'll just take this water bottle, and like I said, that's all quick release, so I just pop it and it comes off, right? And the water bottle's reclaimed, it's back in my hand. And similar to what we did with the tripod now, I'm just going to turn around and take one of the, I've got 2 of the drop lines hanging, yeah? So I'm going to take one of the arms of that and just feed it through, and then just like I did with the tripod to make that loop, I'm going to turn around and take the loop end here, and I'm just going to roll it on itself. So I've got that sliding pocket, just like I showed in the example earlier. I'm going to take the other arm now and just feed that through that opening and get it through to the point where, sorry, it's like -2 out right now, so hands are a little stiff. Once I get past that first knot, I turn around and just allow it to set the tension, and it's locked. And now this water bottle is on to a closed loop system. This isn't going to quick release off. I'm not worried about that accidentally coming off, if you will, in that regard, right? It's really strapped on solidly. Now, you'd use this more if you were in high wind conditions and you were worried about your tarp blowing away and that kind of stuff. Normally, I would just use the quick release if I was just hanging items as I'm showing in this example, yeah? But I just wanted to show exactly the same as we did with the tripod. You can create these closed locked loops that have extreme amounts of functionality when you're out in the field. And if you watch previous videos of mine, I've done whole videos just using loops where I've been able to do 101 things with just a loop in the line. But you can see, it's not hard to get these back off. It just gives you that kind of locking set, if you will. And then I'll show you, because this water bottle has a little knot where really I just did a fisherman's knot that gives me a loop. Here, I'll take this all apart to show. I've just got a loop of cordage that I use like a fisherman's knot to tie it together. And then all I did was turn around and did the same thing with that sliding loop like we were just showing with the modular Ropecraft system. I just put that over top of my water bottle, get it past the lip of the edge, and then just apply tension. And it gives me a way to have this kind of loop onto a water bottle really easily, right? But now I'll turn around and show one more example of just being able to bind items up to this, you know, single set, if you will, yeah? So now it's not just the drop lines that I can, you know, connect off to. I can easily turn around and take where I've got the knots on the line with the little spaces in between them. I can take the fisherman's knot that I have on this loop and just push it through one of those little spaces, if you will, and then I just snug it up against the edge so I know it's kind of firm. And you can see I'm able to strap on this water bottle to the knots and the loops there, the spaces. I'm easily able to kind of quick strap things on that way, you know, and if I want it back, you simply just pull it off, right? And it just gives a little connection point for me to kind of hook and set things really easily to. So, you know, you're not just stuck to having to use the drop lines and that kind of stuff. Anywhere that that there's these kinds of knots and spaces, you can do the same kind of thing like I'm doing here, you know, and it's easy enough to turn around and just do little hitches and stuff onto this line, you know, to be able to connect things with loops of cordage and that as well. It's really, really flexible in that regard. But, you know, like I say, I just want to show as many examples as I can. And you can see now, I'll step back a bit, we're still in a reality where I haven't tied a single knot while we've been out in the field. There's been a couple hitches and stuff, but it's all really easy. I pop that off. Like I say, that's all quick release, so that can come off. When it comes to the connections to the trees and stuff now, I'll shift this back over this way. Because the way this is all quick connected, I just looped around the tree a couple times. That's the longest thing about getting that off. I'm off the tree on that side. And I'll switch to this side, and you can see the quick connect nature. Even though I doubled up on that tree, I'm off on that side, and I've reclaimed all my cordage. I do a rapid release bundle and just roll it back up and put it back into my bag, and I can use it for other things. But hopefully that gives you an idea how quickly you can just set something up where you can hang a few items and then tear it down if you need to. Okay, so now up to this point, I've only really used a single set of my modular ropecraft systems to be able to do all the examples that I've shown through the video so far. But, you know, in the west, I'm up in the west coast of Canada, and we get some really massive trees. Hopefully you can see that. And, you know, this tree right here is probably, you know, 6-8 feet around, you know, and that's one of the smaller ones that are in this area. There's some really massive trees. You can get them 12-15 feet around kind of thing. So there really becomes a lot of cordage. But one of the key things is, because these trees are so massive, you notice there's quite a bit of space that'll sit between one tree and the next. Really, this tree is just shadowing out the other trees around it. So we're gonna have to use multiple ropecraft systems now in order to set up a ridge line between the trees. So I've got, over on this side, there's a smaller diameter tree here, and then I've got a tree that sits over here. I'm gonna hook onto both of those trees, and I'll show kind of daisy chaining along the modular ropecraft systems so that you can reach out across fairly large swaths and easily be able to go around trees of larger diameter. Yeah. So the very first thing, I'm going to take one of my units now, one of my sets, and I'm going to just come around this larger diameter tree, you know, and these can get so massive that it can be difficult to even get around them. So, you know, it's easy enough though to turn around and just walk your way around that tree. And to give you an idea, the full set here, these are 11 foot in length when you get the full set out. But you can see now, it's just massive, and it's how much room it takes to come around. And I'm just going to free up my drop lines so that I can have those later on. So just loosen that off and bring it up a little bit. But it's the exact same thing. I'm just going to do that kind of quick release connect here. Hook it in, apply the tension, and I'm locked against that tree. It's quick release, but I'm not going anywhere, if you will. So, and then I've got the drop lines just sitting here, and I think there's still one strapped on there. But now I'm going to go off, and obviously I can't get over to that other tree now. So I'll shift camera angles, and I'll show daisy chaining these along so I can get out to the length I need, yeah? So you can see now, because that tree itself was about 4 foot, 5 foot round, I'm only left with about 5-6 foot of free line now. So I've got the end with the loop on it. I'm just going to take another one of my units, and I'm just going to take the loop end. I've got these done up in rapid release bundles, yeah? And if you don't know how to do rapid release bundles, and I talk about that in previous videos lots, but I'm just going to take the loop now, feed it through. I'm going to take the rest of the bundle of itself and just pull that through so that I'm connected on. And now I'm strapped and hooked on to the first one wrapped around the tree. I now have this second rapid release bundle. I can just walk out further towards the other tree, yeah? So I'll try to catch this on camera, and you can see that when it comes to walking this out, there's because you've got the knots in the line, it might catch a little bit, but I can do this kind of rapid release concept and apply that to this type of setup. And here I'm not even at this length, I'm still not to that tree. So I'm going to have to daisy chain on another one before I'm even going to reach there. Or I can connect to that tree and come this way and then bind the two sides to each other. It's the exact same thing again. I can just turn around and set that loop through, just big enough to get the bundle through, right? I pull my bundle of the next set, apply a bit of tension. I know that I'm now strapped on here and I'm able to walk it out further. And I can just keep doing that over and over again until I get to the desired length I have, depending on how many sets I have in my line. And as you can see now, I can turn around and apply tension, come back over, pull this back, and then just take the knots exactly I've been showing throughout the video. I can pull this back and just take the knots and set it into one of the spaces in between knots on another part of the set. And it's all quick released. And I'm strapped in there. And it's not going anywhere. This line is tight. You know, and now I've got these drop lines that exist along my line that allow me to turn around and bind up to tarps and that kind of stuff. You know, if I don't want to have it where I'm using these knots with the loops, I can easily pop off, you know, these green ones and just switch down to having the orange ones that are connected to each other, you know, at this point, and have it where there's lots of drop lines all the way along, exactly the same as I've done in previous Modular Ropecraft system videos. It's really flexible in that regard. I'll leave it the way we have it set up now to show you the different connections we can do with tarps and stuff as well, yeah? So one way or the other, I'll shift camera angles, we'll pull out the tarp, and we'll start moving on to that step now. So now with my tarp, I've got my tarp here, and I've got the drop lines. So I'll show connecting to the drop lines and connecting to the knots and all that kind of stuff. We'll walk through a few different varied examples, yeah? So I can simply turn around and just take one of these lines that sits on here and just take a single one of them. And then I take my tarp, and I've always got my tie-out point on the corner of my tarp just sticking through. It's a small loop. So I can easily just turn around and feed that through and just have it where, get past the first knot or so, right? And then I can turn around and just push that, and like I say, I just open up the spaces in between the knots and just push it through, and I can connect my tarp in that regard and just make it like a quick connect, as I've been doing throughout the video, you know, and it's not going anywhere. I can easily just turn around and have that lashed on and run with it at this point. Or I can turn around and make it more of that closed loop connection like I was talking about, where I just take the loop, roll it on itself, kind of create that pocket, I feed the other arm through, get it past that first knot, and then just cinch in behind it, and it's locked. And now this tarp tie-off point is absolutely locked onto that point. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't have the ability to just fall off if there's no tension and that kind of stuff, yeah? So it's really good in that regard. And because it's on a prusik now, just pan back up a bit, I can shift and adjust where this sits to apply tension to the tarp once I've got it strapped up. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the two different ways you can kind of tie in using these drop lines. I mean, there's 101 ways you can use these. This entire system is super flexible, but I'll step back now and I'll show you, you know, if you're old school and you want to keep using toggles and all that kind of stuff, of how you can still use those types of things in this kind of construct, yeah? I kind of shifted the position of this tarp on the line just to try to get better camera work, but you can see I'm now like into that locked loop, closed lock on this corner of the tarp, and I'm able to now just run this out, right? And I can take this out now and just say, okay, let's find the tie off I want to tie into now. And with this tie off now, it's easy enough for me to turn around and use a toggle if I want, and I'll come in close and show this up close, but you know, it's easy enough to turn around and adjust these prusiks and have them positioned wherever I want them to sit. And then I can take the other end, just bring it up and toggle it off. And I'll just set this in, and then I'll come back and grab the camera and show you up close of exactly what I've done here to give you an idea of kind of how cleanly this can be done. But I've just hooked on that toggle now, and you can see that when I apply tension on this prusik, I can bring it out and make this line taut on the ridgeline. So it's good in that regard. Having the prusiks allows me to do that kind of stuff. You know, it's easy enough to adjust the setups and shift things around if you feel like it's just not positioning between the knots and the loops or the spaces or whatever. All of this stuff is really flexible in that regard. But one way or the other, I'll grab the camera and show you that toggle and how simple it is of what I did there. So I'll just pop this out and show it again because it's just that elementary. So I just took the tie off that sits on this tarp, and you know, bring it up and I feed it through one of the spaces in between the knots, and then I just poke through that tie out enough where I can get a stick into it, and then just allow it to apply tension. That's locked on there. It's not going anywhere, right? Super simple. So, and then like I say, it's as simple as if I want to adjust tension now, I'll just shift this back. I know the camera angles are getting funky, but it's what happens when you're in the forest. So, and it's just as simple as that. Of if I want to make this tight, you can see now I just slide that prusik and apply tension, and it makes it super tight here. And if the winds are really heavy, I can turn around and take the additional tie-off points, adjust this subtly, and strap those into the knots and put toggles on there, or I can use my tie-off points to do that as well. You know, it's really flexible, really easy in that regard of how you can kind of strap things down. So in this example so far, I'll step back the cameras and I'll talk for a second. Okay, so I just pinned off one of the corners of the tarp here. I just pinned it down with a tent peg on this corner, and we'll use this other corner to show examples now. But to give you an idea, at this point in time, I made 6 modular Ropecraft unit systems in the previous video. To achieve this, required 3 of them. We've got roughly a 30-foot spread across these trees, and probably 5 diameter round on this tree and about 3 diameter round on the other, to give you an idea of how big of a space this is. You know, it's good being up on the west coast because the trees are so large and spaced out. It allows me to show examples like this. But we could have easily turned around and had, you know, a single one of the other units here that's used to hang the bag, to put the tripod together and hang a pod over the fire. We could do all of that using one of these, where one of the green was for hanging the bag, the other, you know, the orange was used for hanging the pot, and the other green was used for forming the doubled up ring to make the tripod happen. So, you know, you only need 4 of these modular Ropecraft systems to be able to hang your bag, make a tripod, and get your tarp set up, you know, in kind of big conditions, if you will, spread out conditions with large trees. But I'm going to stop now. We'll shift camera angles and we'll start talking about the practicality of using these modular Ropecraft system units as guy lines and that kind of thing. Yeah, so I'll show you some variants and options that you can do in that stuff. So now there's lots of different options that we can do when it comes to guying off things and that kind of stuff as well, right? I can do exactly as we did for that other side, where I can simply just turn around, take a tent peg and stake it into the ground, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Or if I want to get some height where, you know, I want some airflow and that kind of stuff to happen, I can take a single one of the green small ones, and I can do that same quick release, or I can do a permanent lashing. So I can just turn around and do a quick release set onto here, where I'm now hooked onto that point, and I can bring this out, and I don't know if the camera angles are gonna catch this very well. Let's see. Might have to shift you down a little bit, and I can turn around and just bring this out and peg it out further, if you will, depending on how the land is and everything else, right? And all I did was go through the loop now. See if I can even see that. Just go through the loop now of the modular Ropecraft system, and I can just strap onto a tent peg that way super easily. Or I can turn around and just pop that back off. I can do the exact same thing, where I'll bring this in a little closer so I get room to breathe, and I can wrap around this now and then just take my knot and feed it through the loops exactly as we've been doing, and create a quick release here. So now both these points have quick release connections. So if I want to pop this in a hurry and just go, I can take that and it's off there, other than the knots holding on to it. And it's the same on this side. I can pop that and just pop it off. So I can have everything be quick release and flexible in that regard. More of a very conventional kind of setup, where I just pop that loop through on the system, enough to feed the rest of itself through as such and just leave these permanently strapped onto my tarp system. So that's permanently on there. That can sit in my bag over and over again. And when it comes to hooking onto these tent pegs, you know, it's easy enough to turn around and apply a bit of tension. And I've got a quick release that way. So if I want to kind of pull my camp really quickly, I can do that all off of just a single unit, one of these, yeah? So it's really easy and really flexible, even when it comes to just using a single unit there. The options are fairly flexible. But I can also step it up now, and I'll have to adjust the camera again, but I would use this if I really wanted to be conservative on my cordage. I was doing a lot of bag hangs and tripods and had a ridge up or a line up to hang clothes on and items on. And I wanted to put my tarp and everything all, you know, set it all up. In order to save on my modular ropecraft systems, I might just use a single one of these green ones to be able to achieve those kinds of results. Or I could turn around and I'll just pop this back off now. Like I say, I could leave that permanently attached, right? That doesn't have to be, you know, quick released or any of that business. But I'll switch up now and show using more of a conventional 5-foot guyline, which is the orange components of these is 5'9", 5'10", give or take. So now we'll show the flexibility of using the orange component of that with its drop lines and kind of the flexibility we can achieve in that regard, yeah? Okay, so sometimes you'll find that you want to use longer guy lines because of restrictions of the land. You know, if there's a lot of rock in one spot and there's only a spot you can tie off to that's, you know, further over, you just get limitations to the terrain. So I'm going to use the longer 5'9", 5'10" orange ones that we have now with the drop lines on them. And exactly as I was just saying with the green ones, I can turn around and quick connect this so it's all rapid release. And I'm going to do that for this example. But or you can turn around and permanently lash these onto your tarps. You know, if you want to have it that everything's really rigid and just with your gear of your tarp, and you see your tarp as being one of your main components, you know, you might just want to permanently lash on one of these modular ropecraft systems, you know, instead of doing the quick release that I'm doing. But it's really to your discretion, right? But so I'll just pop that tent peg now. So say I was in a situation where, you know, the land was varied. I was only able to stick a tent peg in, say, in this area here because of stone or whatever. Now, because I have these drop lines that exist on there, what that allows me to do is I can just hook the loop of my drop line and just hook that on and then push this prusik. And that prusik now allows me to apply tension to that line and have it really where I can adjust the tension sitting on this by the prusik here. So I'll shift camera angles, I'll come in close and show you exactly what I'm talking here. So hopefully the camera's able to see this okay. I'll just take some of the tension off. So all of this is now is those prusik drop lines that I had done in the tarred bank line. I just took one of the loops that exist on there and just hooked that right onto my tent peg. And then I slid the prusik now, the prusik loops that we had, I slid that down the line and it allowed me to apply tension. And it gives me this kind of adjustable tension now that I can apply easily to, as guy lines to the corners of my tarp, right? So you can put your tent peg in, you know, in the land that's good, and then just make sure you reach out to hook onto that tent peg and then just adjust your tension at will. And this can still, like I say, this is all quick release here. So even though this is under a lot of tension, I can just pop it right here and just pop this off. And this whole thing comes off and that tarp's free again, right? So, you know, it's like I say, there's a lot of flexibility in that regard. You can even get to the point now where if you had a really large complex camp where you had a lot of things, you can take these individual tarred bank line, you know, drop lines, the Modular Ropecraft drop lines, you could take these off and use them to do exactly the same thing as I'm showing here, where a single one of these units can become a guy line tie off that's all quick release and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that shows you kind of the ultimate flexibility of using these modular ropecraft systems. like I say, I'll stop, I'll shift camera angles, I'll just strap this on, and then we'll start to wrap the video up, because I could literally go on for days and days. And I've done previous videos where I've shown making chairs and making beds and all sorts of stuff without having to tie any knots in the field, you know. But like I say, I could easily just show example after example, but to me this gives you the core of a camp, where yeah, you can put up a line so you can get your stuff off the ground, you can do a tripod so you can cook food, you can throw up ridge lines so you can turn around and put up tarps, you can do your guy lines and all that kind of stuff. 99% of the rope craft you're going to do when you're out in the field, you're going to be able to achieve using this system without having to tie a single knot when you're out there. So like I say, there you have it, fellow YouTubers. And it gives you some functioning examples of using the modular ropecraft system when you're out in the field. Now, if you've watched lots of previous videos of mine, I've got ones of these that are done off in Kevlar. I've got other ones that are in tarred bank line. I've got paracord versions. Now, even though they're different diameter ropes, they're all interconnectable and they can all work together. They all have this interoperability that exists across them. And that's one of the really powerful things about using these types of systems. You know, when you're using, like I say, when you're using things like jungle knots and that kind of stuff, you can't turn around and run the prussics out and have the adjustability of the lines like I was showing earlier, where I can just apply tension by shifting the prussic line along the line. You can't do that as easily with jungle knots, and jungle knots use a lot more cordage than the modular ropecraft systems do. They use probably, I want to say, about a third more. They're substantially more. So, you know, when it comes to weight in your kit, you know, having the modular ropecraft systems, to me, they're just unmatched. And depending on, you know, the different variants, if you've watched previous videos, I've done a few different variants of these designs. And when it comes to the Frank Bush simple do-it-yourself ridge lines and those types of things, all this stuff is interoperable with each other because they all use this kind of modular ropecraft principle, you know. And like I say, even this entire construct here that we have in front of us, this whole thing is set up, and I can get it as tight as I want and everything else. This whole thing is set up without it having to tie any knots. I can quick release everything and have it back in my bag in a matter of minutes. To give you an idea of kind of real world without being on the camera and stuff, I can have my bag hung, have a tripod made, have a line up to hang my gear, and have my tarp up on a ridge line. I can do that all in under 10 minutes. It's really, really quick. And it's the same when it comes to tearing it down. I can have my entire camp ripped back down in a matter of minutes, you know. So if you're interested in kind of expanding your ropecraft abilities and stuff, and you don't know exactly how I've built these, I recommend going back and watching the previous video, the one right before this that I published, and it shows detailed breakdown of exactly how I've made these. And if you want to do a kind of more pro grade version, go back and watch my Kevlar ones. You know, those ones are more, they've just got higher strength to the cordage, they're more fire resistant and all that kind of stuff. And if you want more kind of common man, really cheap, you know, pick up $10 worth of rope and just do these projects, you can go back and watch the bank line versions that I've done of these as well. But if you enjoy this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching, yeah? Cheers. Oh, and I guess I'll do a quick little example of how I kind of rebundle these to get them back in my bag. I've shown it in lots of videos, but I'm just going to take my systems and that I've got the two greens joined with the orange, put it all back together. I'm just going to turn around and figure 8 loop as such. I press in those drop lines and just press them right into the pile, come across. When I get down to the point I've got a couple feet left, I just turn around and squeeze it and go sideways now with it. I take the remaining left and I just loosely wrap that around. I'm not doing a lot of tension here because I've got the knots now in these systems. They can catch a little easier. So if I was doing it without any knots in the lines, I would do a really tight bundle here. But because I'm doing the modular ropecraft systems, I just make them a little looser. Then I just take the last knot that's in the line, push it underneath so that it catches as such. And that's it. These are bundled up now and ready to go back in my kit. And like I say, I've got 6 of them. When it comes to the tarp, that kind of setup, it only took 3. If you wanted to do a full camp, you can easily do that with 6 of these and be spread out, because, you know, wide between trees and everything else, yeah? Like I say, if you enjoy this type of content, like, share, and subscribe, yeah? Cheers.